Emma Parker hurried down the bustling streets of downtown Boston, her heels clicking sharply against the polished pavement, a rhythmic echo of her ambitious heartbeat. The city was alive with energy, honking cars, chatter from office workers spilling out of coffee shops, and the endless hum of life racing forward. Emma moved through it all with purpose, a folder clutched tightly under her arm, the promise of her first major promotion hanging like a fragile ornament just within reach. She had spent years building this career, tirelessly proving herself in a world that often underestimated young women in executive positions. Her office was a modern glass tower that reflected the city skyline, a symbol of her accomplishments and the future she had worked so hard to create. Every email she sent, every presentation she polished, felt like a step toward her dream life, a life defined by independence, achievement, and the satisfaction of standing on her own. Yet beneath that polished exterior, a subtle tension simmered, one that even her keen focus could not fully suppress. Emma's phone buzzed in her purse, a notification flashing across the screen with the name that instantly tugged at her heart, Lucas. Her younger brother. She ignored it at first, buried under reports and client calls, but the sense of unease refused to fade. Lucas had always been more than a sibling, he was her anchor, her reminder of the simpler joys she often left behind in pursuit of deadlines and promotions. She remembered childhood nights when he would crawl into her bed during thunderstorms, shivering with fear, and she would soothe him with gentle whispers and hand-knitted blankets. Those memories were soft and warm, but today, they carried a tinge of worry she could not ignore. At her office, Emma's assistant handed her a stack of documents detailing the final preparations for the upcoming merger pitch. Her boss, a brisk, no-nonsense executive, praised her efficiency and reminded her that success in this deal could cement her reputation as a rising star in the company. Emma smiled politely, nodding, but the weight in her chest refused to lift. She knew that the triumphs of the corporate world, the accolades, and the titles, would feel hollow if something went wrong at home. Her mind kept drifting back to Lucas, to the vague unease she couldn't quite shake, to the tiny details of his voice when he called last night, softer than usual, a subtle tremor in his tone that now gnawed at her peace. Later that evening, after the city lights shimmered across the Charles River, Emma received a call that would change everything. It was from the hospital near their small Vermont hometown, a place she had not visited in years. The voice on the other end was calm yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. Lucas had been experiencing severe fatigue, persistent pain, and symptoms that required immediate medical attention. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold, cutting through the carefully constructed armor of her busy life. Emma's mind raced, heart pounding in a rhythm she had never felt during a boardroom presentation or a business negotiation. The thought of her little brother, her confidant, her friend, her constant companion in childhood adventures, facing something she could not fix, terrified her. The flight back to Vermont was a blur of clouds and introspection. Emma looked out over the wing at the sprawling patchwork of fields and forests below, a stark contrast to the steel and glass of Boston. Memories of her youth returned in vivid detail, the small white house with blue shutters where she and Lucas had grown up, the rickety treehouse they had built together, and the quiet morning spent drinking cocoa on the porch while the sun rose over the hills. Those days had seemed endless, carefree, and yet so precious. Now, as the plane descended into a town that had remained almost frozen in time, Emma felt an unfamiliar vulnerability. Her accomplishments, her promotions, her hard-won victories, they all seemed fragile in the face of an unknown threat to the one person who had always been her anchor. Arriving at the hospital, Emma's pulse quickened. The sterile scent of antiseptic, the soft beeping of machines, and the hurried footsteps of nurses created a tense, cinematic backdrop for what she feared. Lucas lay in a hospital bed, his face pale but still carrying the gentle, mischievous smile she knew so well. Seeing him like this, fragile, vulnerable, yet still alive, pulled a mixture of sorrow, guilt, and fierce protectiveness through Emma. Doctors explained the diagnosis in careful terms, a rare, serious illness requiring immediate intervention, a treatment plan that would demand both time and emotional resilience. Emma listened, absorbing each word, her mind torn between panic and determination. She realized instantly that her life in Boston, her career trajectory, and all the dreams she had fought for were now weighed against a choice that no one could make for her. Walking the sterile corridors with Lucas's hand in hers, Emma's thoughts swirled in a storm of what-ifs. She remembered the countless nights she had dreamed of a corner office, of recognition, of a life defined by success rather than circumstance. And now, in the shadow of her brother's illness, she questioned the meaning of all of it. Could ambition truly compare to love, to family, to the life of someone who had always loved her unconditionally? The scene captures the cinematic tension, the city girl confronted by the raw, intimate reality of small-town hospitals, the contrast between her polished, controlled world and the fragile human vulnerability she now faces. That night, Emma sat by Lucas's bedside long after the nurses had gone, the quiet hum of the machines filling the space. She held his hand, feeling its warmth, and whispered memories of their childhood, hoping to bring comfort even as her own tears fell. The weight of the choice ahead pressed heavily on her: pursue her dreams in Boston or stay here, relinquishing the life she had meticulously planned, to be the caregiver, protector, and unwavering support for the brother who had once been the center of her world. The audience feels the emotional gravity, the tension between personal ambition and moral responsibility, a theme deeply resonant with American family values and the struggles many face balancing career and home. By the end of the night, Emma made her first unspoken vow: no matter what it took, she would be there for Lucas. The promise marked the beginning of a journey that would challenge her strength, reshape her identity, and test the very essence of love and sacrifice. The camera would linger on her face, a mixture of determination, fear, and hope, as the screen fades to black, leaving viewers emotionally hooked and yearning to follow her story. Emma stood in the sterile hallway of the small-town Vermont hospital, her hand clutching Lucas's chart as if it could somehow anchor her to reality. The fluorescent lights above hummed softly, casting a cold, impersonal glow over the linoleum floors, a stark contrast to the warmth of her bustling Boston apartment and sleek office space. She had returned home expecting nostalgia, comfort, maybe even a temporary reprieve from her hectic life, but instead, she was faced with a decision that no amount of career planning or life experience could have prepared her for. Lucas's condition was serious. The doctors spoke carefully, their tones professional but tinged with concern. They outlined treatment options, explaining the rigorous care required, the long-term commitment, and the uncertain outcomes. Emma's mind raced. The words floated in and out like a disorienting fog: specialist consultation, experimental treatment, daily care, hospital visits. Every term added weight, pressing down on her chest, constricting her thoughts. Her carefully curated life in Boston, the one she had built with such dedication and sacrifice, now seemed fragile, almost irrelevant. She thought about her promotion, the project she had poured months into, the late nights spent preparing presentations, and the recognition that could have propelled her into the executive ranks. Each ambition felt suddenly petty against the backdrop of her brother's fragile health. Emma had always believed that success in the corporate world would bring satisfaction, independence, and security. Now, she realized those dreams carried a price she wasn't prepared to pay if it meant neglecting the person who had shaped her childhood, who had been her constant companion, confidant, and emotional anchor. Her parents entered the room quietly, the familiar worry etched on their faces. Her mother's hand rested gently on Emma's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and solidarity, while her father's eyes were firm yet filled with concern. "Emma," her mother said softly, "we know this is a huge decision, but your brother needs you more than ever." The words, tender and heavy, struck Emma at her core. She had always been independent, capable of managing her own life with precision, but this was different. This required not just time, but emotional presence, sacrifice, and a willingness to set aside her own ambitions for someone else's survival. Emma sat down on the edge of Lucas's hospital bed, looking at him lying there, pale but smiling faintly. Even in his weakened state, he radiated a quiet optimism, a resilience that had always amazed her. He reached out a frail hand, and she held it, feeling the warmth and the unspoken bond between them. Lucas whispered softly, "It's okay, Emma. I know you'll make the right choice." His trust in her, unshaken even in his vulnerability, pulled at her heart. She wanted to promise him that everything would be okay, but the uncertainty gnawed at her, making the choice ahead feel even heavier. As she pondered her options, Emma's mind flickered back to Boston, her apartment, the skyline view from her office, the busy streets, her friends and colleagues, the recognition she had earned. Those elements had defined her identity, shaped her worldview, and given her purpose. But here, in this small town, she saw a different life unfolding, one filled with intimate connection, familial responsibility, and the raw, unfiltered realities of love and caregiving. She realized that the kind of courage required here was different from negotiating contracts or leading meetings. This was personal, moral courage, the kind that demanded sacrifice without guarantee of reward. The hours stretched on as Emma weighed the decision, pacing the quiet corridors, listening to the distant hum of hospital machinery, and the occasional chatter of nurses. She considered calling her boss, explaining the situation, asking for a leave of absence, but she knew in her heart that temporary absence wouldn't suffice. Lucas's care was ongoing, demanding, unpredictable. The thought of returning to Boston while he battled his illness, relying on others for updates, made her stomach twist. Every option carried cost, either her career trajectory or her brother's well-being. Emma's inner turmoil was amplified by societal expectations. She had grown up in a culture that prized independence, achievement, and self-sufficiency, values she had internalized. Yet the deep-rooted American ideal of family loyalty and support for loved ones now collided with her professional ambitions. She understood that giving up her career, even temporarily, might be seen as a sacrifice of personal progress, a deviation from the path she had meticulously charted. And yet, the thought of not being there for Lucas, of missing crucial moments in his struggle, filled her with guilt and fear. Late into the night, Emma sat by Lucas's bedside, her fingers intertwined with his, her eyes tracing the faint lines of his face. Memories of their childhood came flooding back, the way he had clung to her during thunderstorms, the countless afternoons spent exploring nearby woods, the laughter that had echoed through their small house. Those memories reminded her of the deep bond they shared, a connection that no professional accolade could ever replace. The hospital room, with its beeping monitors and antiseptic smell, felt like the crossroads of her life, one path leading back to Boston, corporate success, and independence, the other rooted in Vermont, filled with uncertainty, caregiving, and the unwavering presence her brother desperately needed. By dawn, the decision began to crystallize in her mind. Emma realized that some achievements, no matter how prestigious, paled in comparison to the intangible rewards of love, presence, and support. Choosing her brother was not a denial of her identity but an expansion of it, a commitment to values that defined the core of who she was. She would give up the corner office, the accolades, the bustling city life, at least for now, not out of obligation, but out of love, responsibility, and a sense of moral purpose. When she finally spoke to her parents, her voice firm yet tender, she said, "I'm staying. I'll be here for Lucas, every step of the way. My career, it can wait. He can't." Relief and pride mingled on her parents' faces, and even Lucas's weak smile shone with understanding and gratitude. In that moment, the impossible choice became clear: love and family would guide her path, and no measure of professional success could outweigh the life and well-being of her brother. The section closes with Emma sitting by Lucas's side, holding his hand as dawn breaks through the hospital window. The soft golden light falls on both of them, symbolizing hope, resilience, and the beginning of a journey defined by sacrifice, courage, and an unwavering bond between siblings. The audience is left with the emotional weight of her choice, deeply resonant with American family values and the universal struggle of balancing personal ambition with moral responsibility. Emma stepped out of her car and inhaled the crisp Vermont air, a stark contrast to the smoggy streets of Boston she had left behind. The town was quiet, almost frozen in time, with snow-dusted rooftops and smoke curling from chimneys. It was a place where everyone knew each other's names, where neighbors waved from driveways, and where small-town charm intertwined with a comforting sense of familiarity. But despite the beauty, Emma felt an undercurrent of sorrow threading through the air, a heaviness that mirrored her own heart. Returning home was supposed to be a comforting embrace, a pause from her hectic city life, yet it now carried the weight of fear and uncertainty. Driving up the familiar, winding road to her childhood home, Emma's mind wandered back to simpler days. She remembered snowball fights with Lucas in the front yard, the smell of her mother's cinnamon rolls wafting from the kitchen, and quiet evenings by the fireplace where the siblings would sit for hours talking about dreams and secrets. Yet now, the same house that once radiated warmth seemed quieter, almost fragile, as if it too sensed the uncertainty looming over them. Her parents were waiting at the door, and as she stepped inside, the sight of Lucas in his usual corner, pale and still, made her stomach twist. The cozy home felt like both a sanctuary and a prison, reminding her of the life she had momentarily set aside to care for her brother. Emma's parents embraced her tightly, relief mingling with worry in their eyes. Her father's broad shoulders, usually a symbol of strength, seemed slightly hunched, and her mother's hands trembled as she adjusted Lucas's blanket. "We're so glad you're here," her mother whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Emma nodded, swallowing hard, realizing that this homecoming wasn't just about comfort, it was about responsibility, about stepping fully into a role she had never anticipated. She had left the bustling streets of Boston with her dreams, but here, in this small-town house, her priorities had shifted, anchored now to Lucas and his fragile health. The first days back were a blur of hospital visits, medication schedules, and navigating the bureaucratic maze of insurance paperwork. Emma quickly realized that caring for Lucas required more than love, it demanded organization, patience, and resilience. She found herself waking at dawn to administer medications, coordinating appointments with specialists, and monitoring his symptoms hour by hour. The emotional toll was immense. Even as she tried to remain strong, she felt moments of despair creeping in, moments when she questioned her choice, wondering if she had given up too much for too little certainty. Yet amidst the strain, Emma observed Lucas in ways she never had before. Despite his illness, he carried a quiet dignity, a playful optimism that refused to be dimmed by his condition. He teased her gently, made jokes that drew reluctant laughter, and shared memories of their childhood that reminded them both of who they were outside of hospitals and treatments. These moments of levity were lifelines, fragile threads of normalcy that anchored Emma when the weight of her new reality threatened to overwhelm her. She realized that her presence wasn't just about administering care, it was about maintaining hope, about providing emotional stability that no doctor or nurse could supply. The small-town environment amplified the contrast between her previous life and the one she now inhabited. In Boston, life was fast, impersonal, and achievement-driven. Here, relationships and community mattered in tangible ways. Neighbors brought casseroles, local shopkeepers asked about Lucas's progress, and old friends offered help without hesitation. It was a warmth she hadn't realized she had been missing, a reminder that life wasn't solely measured by promotions or accolades. Yet, this comfort came with its own pressure. She had to step up in ways that demanded emotional courage, constant attention, and unflagging strength. Every moment carried significance, and every misstep could feel catastrophic in the delicate balance of Lucas's health. One particularly heavy evening, Emma found herself in the kitchen alone, staring out at the snow-covered fields beyond the window. The quiet was suffocating, and memories of Boston flooded back, the meetings, the networking events, the moments of personal triumph. She felt the sting of grief for the life she had temporarily abandoned, a grief compounded by guilt. Had she made the right choice? Was she strong enough to navigate this new world of endless caregiving? The room felt smaller, the walls pressing inward, and she fought back tears, realizing that homecoming, while filled with love, was not without sacrifice. Emma's bond with her parents was also tested. Her father struggled to remain stoic, attempting to mask his worry with humor, while her mother oscillated between gentle encouragement and quiet anxiety. There were moments of tension, small disagreements over treatment decisions, household responsibilities, or the pace at which Emma was adjusting. These conflicts, though minor in isolation, reflected the deeper emotional strain of a family confronting illness together. Emma realized that returning home was not simply a matter of physical presence, it required navigating complex emotional terrain, balancing empathy, authority, and patience in a way she had never needed to do in her professional life. Despite the hardships, Emma also began to rediscover her own strength. She found resilience in the quiet routines, courage in the late-night vigils by Lucas's bedside, and determination in the face of each new obstacle. The small victories, a day without a hospital visit, a rare laugh from Lucas, a supportive gesture from a neighbor, became milestones of emotional survival. Slowly, Emma understood that homecoming was not about regression or sacrifice alone, it was about growth, about redefining success in a way that included compassion, family, and moral integrity. As the first week drew to a close, Emma sat with Lucas by the fireplace, the glow of the flames dancing across their faces. Snow fell softly outside, blanketing the town in silence. She watched her brother's eyes, bright with trust and affection, and felt a profound shift within herself. This homecoming, filled with heartbreak, uncertainty, and sacrifice, was also the beginning of a journey toward resilience, love, and hope. She realized that the life she had left behind in Boston could wait, what mattered now was presence, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between siblings. The section closes with Emma holding Lucas's hand, both of them gazing into the firelight. Outside, the town is quiet, the snow reflecting the soft glow of streetlights, a visual metaphor for the stillness and clarity that comes with choice, love, and responsibility. Emma's heart is heavy yet steady, the weight of her decision settling into resolve. The audience feels the emotional pull of her sacrifice, the bittersweet beauty of returning home, and the promise of the journey ahead, setting the stage for the next chapter in their shared story. Emma's days quickly fell into a rhythm dictated not by alarms or deadlines, but by Lucas's needs. She woke before dawn, the chill of Vermont winter seeping through the windows, and prepared medications with meticulous care. Every pill, every injection, every scheduled therapy session was a responsibility she bore with the precision she had once reserved for boardroom presentations. Yet, unlike the corporate world, mistakes here were not just minor setbacks, they could have profound consequences. The stakes were personal, deeply intimate, and pressing. The hospital became a second home. Emma navigated the sterile hallways with familiarity, forming quiet bonds with nurses, therapists, and administrative staff. She quickly realized that caregiving was a lesson in humility and vigilance. No amount of planning could fully prepare her for the unpredictability of Lucas's condition. Sudden fevers, bouts of fatigue, and emotional swings kept her on edge. There were days when he was weak and withdrawn, staring blankly at the ceiling, and Emma had to summon every ounce of patience and love to coax a smile or a word of encouragement from him. On other days, his laughter and teasing brought warmth into the sterile hospital walls, reminding her of the siblings she had grown up with and the resilience that lay beneath his frail exterior. Back at the house, chores and responsibilities that had once seemed trivial now consumed her attention. Meals had to be carefully prepared to meet dietary restrictions, laundry folded and organized, bills paid on time. Emma discovered that caregiving extended far beyond the hospital, a full-time, all-encompassing duty that demanded emotional, physical, and mental energy. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her, sometimes leaving her physically exhausted, sometimes emotionally raw. And yet, she carried it with a quiet determination, because the alternative, neglect, absence, or avoidance, was unthinkable. Emma's inner world was a storm. She struggled with feelings of frustration and guilt, emotions unfamiliar to the organized, achievement-driven woman she had once been. At times, she found herself resenting the situation, wondering if she had given up too much, too soon. She longed for the familiarity of her Boston life, the professional challenges, the autonomy, the sense of identity forged through her work. Yet, even in moments of doubt, she reminded herself why she had chosen this path. Lucas needed her, and love demanded presence over ambition. It was a lesson in perspective, one that her corporate achievements could never teach. The contrast between her old life and her new reality was stark. In Boston, she had been a rising star, commanding respect, driving results, and living in a world defined by schedules, deadlines, and external validation. Here, in a small Vermont town, her success was measured in small victories: a day without a hospital visit, a smile from Lucas, a meal prepared on time. Yet these victories carried profound meaning. Emma began to understand that life's most significant accomplishments were not always recognized on a public stage. Sometimes, they were quiet, intimate, and deeply personal. Emma also began to witness the subtle ways in which caregiving affected Lucas. Though young, he had a resilience and awareness beyond his years. He understood the gravity of his condition and tried to lighten her burdens with humor, small gestures of gratitude, and acts of independence whenever possible. His courage became a source of inspiration for Emma, a reminder that her efforts were not in vain. Together, they developed a rhythm, moments of laughter interspersed with the difficult realities of illness. It was a delicate balance, one that required constant attention, empathy, and emotional fortitude. The local community played a quiet but significant role in easing the weight of responsibility. Neighbors offered support in ways both large and small: a casserole dropped off at the doorstep, a kind word during a chance encounter at the grocery store, or an offer to drive Lucas to appointments. These gestures, seemingly ordinary, became extraordinary in their emotional impact. Emma realized that caring for a loved one was not solely an individual endeavor. It was woven into the fabric of community, the subtle network of human connection that often went unnoticed until moments of need. There were nights when Emma sat alone in the living room, exhausted and overwhelmed, watching the soft glow of the fireplace dance across the walls. She reflected on her past life, the choices that had brought her here, and the sacrifices she had willingly made. The quiet moments allowed her to process grief, frustration, and love simultaneously. She began to accept that her strength was not limitless, but her commitment was unwavering. This acceptance did not diminish her vulnerability; instead, it allowed her to channel it into resilience and compassion. Emma's relationship with her parents evolved during this time. Her mother, who had initially been both supportive and anxious, began to see Emma's growing confidence in caregiving. Her father, often stoic and reserved, allowed himself moments of vulnerability, acknowledging the burdens Emma carried. The family dynamic shifted subtly, moving from concern and fear to quiet pride and mutual respect. Emma found herself emerging as a central figure in their family, not just a daughter or a sister, but a caregiver, advocate, and moral anchor. Amid these responsibilities, Emma's personal growth was profound. She discovered patience she had never known, a capacity for empathy that transcended her professional skills, and an emotional resilience forged in the quiet, unglamorous moments of caregiving. The experience reshaped her understanding of what it meant to be successful, fulfilled, and morally accountable. She came to see that the weight of responsibility, though heavy, was also a conduit for transformation, a path that led to deeper love, richer connections, and a more nuanced understanding of life's true priorities. By the end of each long day, as Emma tucked Lucas into bed and watched him sleep, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and quiet satisfaction. The weight of responsibility remained, but it was no longer oppressive. Instead, it had become a defining part of her identity, a testament to her courage, love, and moral integrity. Through the long nights, the hospital visits, and the relentless demands of caregiving, Emma understood that this journey, though challenging, was shaping her into the person she was meant to be, a woman defined not just by her ambitions, but by her capacity for love, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to those she cherished most. As the days turned into weeks, the initial adrenaline that had propelled Emma through the early stages of Lucas's care began to ebb. The routines, once comforting in their structure, now felt suffocating. Every day brought new challenges: unexpected complications in Lucas's health, miscommunications with insurance providers, and the relentless pressure of ensuring he received the best possible treatment. The weight of responsibility that she had once borne with pride began to show its cracks. Emma felt exhaustion seep into her bones, an invisible fog clouding her focus and patience. The hospital, which had become a second home, now seemed like a labyrinth. Emma moved through the corridors with mechanical precision, greeting nurses with practiced smiles even as her mind reeled. There were moments when the beeping of monitors, the clatter of carts, and the murmur of medical staff all merged into a relentless drone, amplifying her sense of isolation. Though surrounded by care and expertise, she felt profoundly alone in her responsibility. The decisions she faced, sometimes life-altering, rested squarely on her shoulders. The cracks in her armor were not visible to others, but internally, every misstep, every minor oversight, gnawed at her confidence. At home, the strain was equally palpable. Emma found herself snapping over small things, a spilled cup of tea, a misplaced medication, or Lucas's occasional defiance in adhering to his treatment schedule. Moments of frustration brought immediate guilt, as she realized she was allowing her stress to affect the person she loved most. Each emotional lapse reminded her that she was human, vulnerable, and imperfect, a stark contrast to the professional persona she had cultivated in Boston. The constant tension between her role as caregiver and her need for personal space began to erode the careful equilibrium she had struggled to maintain. Lucas, perceptive despite his own struggles, began to sense the shift. One evening, he looked up at her with weary, questioning eyes, his voice soft, "Emma, are you okay?" His concern cut through her defenses, leaving her momentarily exposed. In that moment, Emma recognized the unspoken truth: her brother's illness was not just a physical battle but an emotional one, and her own well-being was intrinsically tied to his. She had to find a way to reconcile her fatigue and vulnerability with the unwavering care he depended upon. The quiet moments of reflection were the hardest. Late at night, when the house was silent and Lucas slept fitfully, Emma allowed herself to confront the fears she had kept at bay. She thought about the life she had left behind in Boston, the career milestones, the friendships, the independence, and felt pangs of regret. Had she given up too much? Was the sacrifice worth the price of her own dreams? These questions, though uncomfortable, were essential. They forced Emma to examine her priorities and to confront the deep, often painful realities of love, responsibility, and human limitation. Flashbacks of her childhood with Lucas surfaced with vivid clarity. She remembered holding his hand as they crossed the neighborhood streets, his laughter echoing in the crisp Vermont air, and the countless times they had confided in one another. Those memories, once sources of comfort, now carried a bittersweet weight. They reminded her of what was at stake, of the life that Lucas might lose if she faltered, and of the immense responsibility that came with being the person he relied upon most. These recollections fueled both determination and fear, leaving her suspended between hope and despair. Emma's interactions with her parents, once warm and collaborative, began to strain under the pressure. Her mother, protective and anxious, questioned every decision, while her father, stoic and reserved, sometimes offered guidance too late or too harshly. The subtle conflicts that arose were amplified by the high stakes of Lucas's condition. Emma felt torn between asserting her judgment as the primary caregiver and honoring her parents' insights and emotional investment. The familial tension underscored the emotional complexity of caregiving, how love and duty can coexist with frustration, disagreement, and exhaustion. One particularly challenging day, Emma accompanied Lucas to a specialist consultation in Burlington. The doctor's words, cautiously optimistic yet filled with technical uncertainty, triggered an emotional cascade. Emma's carefully maintained composure faltered. She felt the weight of helplessness, fear, and the daunting realization that some outcomes were beyond her control. Sitting in the car afterward, staring out at the snow-covered landscape, she let herself cry, a release of weeks of tension she had bottled inside. It was a small, quiet moment, but profoundly cathartic, a reminder that acknowledging vulnerability was not weakness, but a necessary part of sustaining strength. Through these moments, Emma discovered unexpected reservoirs of resilience. She learned to seek support, to ask for help from friends, neighbors, and hospital staff, and to accept that she could not bear the burden alone. Community, once peripheral in her life, became a lifeline. Local volunteers offered to drive Lucas to appointments, neighbors brought meals, and childhood friends provided companionship and encouragement. These gestures of solidarity reinforced a central truth: caregiving was not a solitary endeavor, but a shared human experience, anchored in empathy, connection, and mutual support. Despite the emotional turbulence, Emma also recognized growth in herself. She became more patient, more attuned to subtle emotional cues, and more adaptable in navigating uncertainty. The cracks in her armor, though daunting, allowed light to enter, light in the form of empathy, compassion, and profound love. She began to see that vulnerability was not antithetical to strength, rather, it was the foundation of authentic courage, the kind that enables one to confront life's uncertainties while remaining steadfast in care and commitment. Lucas, witnessing his sister's struggle, mirrored her courage in his own way. He offered small reassurances, attempted to participate in his treatment, and reminded her to rest when she could. Their relationship deepened, evolving into a partnership of mutual reliance and understanding. Each moment of laughter, each shared memory, each quiet conversation became a thread weaving them closer together, strengthening their bond against the backdrop of uncertainty and fear. By the end of the week, Emma's perspective had shifted. While the cracks in her armor remained, they were no longer symbols of weakness, they were reminders of the emotional depth and moral courage required to navigate her new reality. She understood that resilience was not the absence of fear or fatigue, but the capacity to move forward despite them. With renewed determination, she committed herself to Lucas's care, to the delicate balance of her own emotional needs, and to the understanding that love, sacrifice, and vulnerability were inextricably linked in the journey they shared. The section closes with Emma sitting quietly by Lucas's bedside, holding his hand as evening light filters through the window. Outside, the Vermont town is serene, snow glistening under fading sunlight, a visual reflection of the fragile beauty and complexity of life. The audience feels the profound emotional stakes, the toll of caregiving, and the subtle triumph of resilience, setting the stage for the next chapter in their shared journey. The first snow of winter had settled over the small Vermont town, blanketing the streets and rooftops in a soft, quiet hush. Emma walked briskly to the hospital that morning, her mind still weighed with the previous week's challenges, the sleepless nights, the hospital visits, and the constant vigilance that Lucas's care demanded. She was exhausted, physically and emotionally, and the tension that had been building inside her for weeks now felt unbearable. She longed for guidance, for someone to help navigate the storm she was in, and though she didn't know it. Yet, that help was about to arrive. Dr. Sophia Reynolds entered Emma's life like a quiet force of reassurance. The oncologist, mid-40s, with kind eyes and an approachable demeanor, had a reputation for being compassionate yet exceptionally skilled. Unlike the brisk, procedural professionals Emma had encountered in Boston, Dr. Reynolds brought warmth and understanding to every interaction. When Emma first met her, she felt an unexpected relief, a sense that perhaps they were no longer alone in this fight. The doctor listened patiently, explained treatment options clearly, and acknowledged the emotional toll caregiving exacted. "This isn't just about medication and procedures," Dr. Reynolds said softly. "It's about supporting each other, Lucas, you, your family. Healing isn't only physical." The dynamic between Emma and Dr. Reynolds was different from any professional relationship she had ever experienced. In the corporate world, guidance often came with a transactional tone, success metrics, deliverables, deadlines. Here, guidance was grounded in empathy, patience, and understanding. Dr. Reynolds shared not only medical knowledge but also strategies for emotional resilience, reminding Emma that caring for a sick loved one required attention to her own well-being as well. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Emma," she said gently. "Supporting Lucas means supporting yourself too." Those words struck her deeply, as though a weight she hadn't fully acknowledged had just been named and validated. As they walked the hospital corridors together, Dr. Reynolds shared stories of other families who had faced similar challenges, weaving in lessons of hope, patience, and resilience. She introduced Emma to resources she hadn't known existed, support groups, counseling services, and local networks of families navigating chronic illness. These connections became lifelines, helping Emma see that she was not alone, that the challenges she faced were part of a broader human experience. The presence of someone so skilled and compassionate gave her strength she hadn't realized she was missing, planting the seeds for renewed determination. Emma also reconnected with Jake, a childhood friend who had stayed in the town and now worked as a social worker. His grounded nature and calm demeanor provided a striking contrast to Emma's fast-paced, high-stress Boston mindset. Jake had a way of cutting through anxiety with practical solutions, humor, and quiet reassurance. Together, they would often sit in the local diner after a hospital appointment, sipping coffee and talking through logistics, treatment plans, and emotional struggles. His presence reminded Emma that community and human connection could be just as essential as medical expertise. Through these interactions, Emma began to see her situation from a new perspective. She realized that caregiving was not a solitary endeavor, it was a network of support, skill, and empathy. The small town, which had initially felt constraining compared to her life in Boston, now revealed itself as a source of profound strength. Every act of kindness, a nurse staying late to check on Lucas, a neighbor bringing a homemade meal, or Jake helping coordinate appointments, reinforced the truth that Emma's journey, though deeply personal, was shared and supported by those around her. Dr. Reynolds became a mentor in both practical and emotional dimensions. She helped Emma navigate the medical complexities of Lucas's treatment, from understanding test results to coordinating specialist consultations. She also emphasized the importance of emotional resilience, guiding Emma to recognize signs of burnout and teaching her ways to maintain her own well-being without guilt. Their relationship was a partnership, built on mutual respect, trust, and a shared commitment to Lucas's recovery. One pivotal moment came when Dr. Reynolds suggested considering an experimental treatment. It was a complex option, with risks and uncertain outcomes, and Emma initially recoiled at the thought. The decision weighed heavily, another crossroads in a journey filled with impossible choices. But Dr. Reynolds offered clarity, laying out the medical possibilities with honesty, compassion, and evidence. She reassured Emma that whatever choice they made would be guided by knowledge, care, and Lucas's best interests. In that moment, Emma felt a renewed sense of agency. She was no longer facing uncertainty alone. Jake's presence complemented this support. He offered practical help and emotional stability, grounding Emma when doubt threatened to overwhelm her. On particularly difficult days, he reminded her of Lucas's resilience, the family's capacity to endure, and the strength she herself had cultivated through sacrifice and love. He helped her see that courage was not just about grand gestures, but about showing up consistently, choosing love and commitment even when exhaustion threatened to consume her. Together, Dr. Reynolds and Jake became Emma's unexpected allies, reshaping her understanding of what it meant to fight for someone she loved. They reminded her that hope often arose from connection, guidance, and trust, rather than sheer determination alone. They reinforced the idea that while Emma's role was crucial, it was also part of a larger network of care, a shared responsibility grounded in empathy and human resilience. Through these relationships, Emma began to reclaim some of her emotional equilibrium. She allowed herself moments of rest, shared her fears openly, and accepted help without shame. Slowly, the cracks in her armor began to mend, not by erasing struggle, but by integrating support, connection, and guidance into her daily life. Her bond with Lucas also deepened. She became more patient, emotionally attuned, and capable of balancing her own needs with his. She realized that allies could take many forms, mentors, friends, and even the broader community, and that leaning on them was not a weakness, but a vital component of strength. By the end of this section, Emma had transformed her perspective on caregiving and resilience. The unexpected allies in her life, Dr. Reynolds and Jake, had helped her see that love and support could multiply courage, that guidance could transform fear into strategy, and that community could provide sustenance in moments of profound exhaustion. She felt renewed determination, ready to face the next stages of Lucas's journey with hope, courage, and the knowledge that she did not have to carry the weight alone. The section closes with Emma standing outside the hospital at dusk, snowflakes drifting around her, looking toward the warm glow of the building. Inside, Lucas rested comfortably, his small hand reaching for hers. The camera lingers on Emma's face, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and renewed resolve, a visual testament to the power of unexpected allies and the transformative strength of human connection in the midst of life's greatest challenges. Winter in Vermont carried a quiet serenity that contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions inside Emma. Each day brought a mix of progress and setbacks, small victories and lingering fears, and it was in these moments that the fragility of hope became both a lifeline and a burden. Emma had grown accustomed to the routine of Lucas's care, the medications, hospital visits, and therapy sessions, but no amount of planning could shield her from the unpredictability of his illness. Every improvement was celebrated, every decline mourned, and the emotional pendulum swung relentlessly. One morning, Emma arrived at the hospital to find Lucas sitting up in bed, a faint smile breaking through the pallor of his illness. He had managed to eat breakfast and even engage in a short conversation with the nurse, something that had been difficult in the preceding weeks. Emma's heart lifted as she saw this glimpse of her brother's resilience, a fragile thread of hope that reminded her why she had made the choice to stay. She held his hand tightly, feeling the warmth and life that had been at risk, and whispered, "We're in this together, always." It was a small moment, yet monumental in its emotional impact, a testament to the power of presence, love, and unwavering commitment. These fleeting victories were often followed by moments of despair. A sudden fever, a missed medication, or a discouraging test result could shatter the fragile optimism Emma had nurtured. Each setback reminded her of the stakes, the uncertainty, and the weight of responsibility she carried. Yet it was precisely in these moments that her resilience was tested and strengthened. Emma began to understand that hope was not a constant state, but a delicate balance, one that required attention, patience, and the courage to keep moving forward despite fear. Emma's parents were a constant source of emotional grounding. Her mother, though often anxious, offered comfort and reassurance, her soft voice and gentle touch helping to soothe both Lucas and Emma. Her father, quiet but steadfast, provided stability through his practical support and unspoken strength. Together, the family navigated the highs and lows, their interactions deepening in meaning and intimacy as they faced the shared challenge of illness. The bond between them, once ordinary, had transformed into something profound, an unspoken promise of unwavering support and love, anchored in both struggle and triumph. Outside the hospital walls, the Vermont community played a subtle yet essential role. Neighbors stopped by with meals, school friends of Lucas offered handmade cards and drawings, and local volunteers provided transportation for appointments and errands. These gestures, small in isolation, created a web of support that bolstered Emma's courage and reminded her that she was not alone. The community's involvement reinforced the theme that hope often flourishes in connection, not solitude, and that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples of emotional strength in times of crisis. Amid the oscillating emotions, Emma found solace in routine moments of quiet reflection. She and Lucas often sat by the fireplace in the evenings, the soft flicker of the flames casting warm light across their faces. They spoke of memories, dreams, and trivial stories from the past, allowing themselves brief escapes from the weight of illness. These moments were fragile and fleeting, yet they were also profoundly restorative, providing both siblings with a sense of normalcy and emotional grounding. In the quiet of these evenings, Emma realized that hope was not just about medical progress, it was about preserving joy, laughter, and connection even in the face of uncertainty. Emma also began documenting small milestones, Lucas's first hearty meal in weeks, a laugh shared between them, a successful physical therapy session. These records, though simple, became tangible reminders that progress existed even amid setbacks. They provided Emma with perspective, preventing her from becoming consumed by fear or frustration. Each small victory, no matter how minor, reinforced the idea that hope was cumulative, built moment by moment, and that perseverance, presence, and care were as crucial to recovery as any treatment or intervention. The emotional landscape of hope was further complicated by the external pressures Emma faced. Her friends and colleagues from Boston occasionally reached out, curious about her absence and her choice to step away from her career. While their messages were well-intentioned, they often reminded Emma of the life she had set aside, evoking subtle pangs of guilt and longing. Yet even in these moments, she discovered clarity. Her decision to stay was rooted in love and responsibility, values that transcended professional ambition. These realizations strengthened her resolve, reaffirming that true courage often involves making difficult choices for the sake of others, even when it comes at personal cost. Lucas's own emotional growth was a source of inspiration. Despite his vulnerability, he demonstrated patience, gratitude, and moments of courage that amazed Emma. His humor, often subtle and dry, brought laughter to their days, even when they were weighed down by medical concerns. These moments reminded Emma that hope was not passive, it required engagement, acknowledgement, and the willingness to embrace joy wherever it could be found. Together, they learned that hope could be both fragile and resilient, delicate yet unyielding when nurtured through love and presence. By the end of the section, Emma had come to understand that moments of fragile hope were not merely emotional experiences, they were lifelines, guiding her through uncertainty, sustaining her resolve, and reinforcing the moral and emotional significance of her choice to remain by Lucas's side. The interplay between small victories, community support, familial love, and personal resilience created a rich tapestry of emotional depth, reminding the audience that hope is a dynamic, living force, nurtured through care, courage, and connection. The section closes with Emma sitting beside Lucas, holding his hand as twilight falls over the Vermont town. Outside, snowflakes drift silently through the fading light, mirroring the delicate balance between vulnerability and strength they had both learned to embrace. The scene lingers on their intertwined hands and the quiet glow of the room, symbolizing the fragile yet enduring hope that will guide them through the challenges ahead, leaving the audience emotionally invested and eager to witness the next stage of their journey. The late winter sun poured through the frosted windows of Lucas's hospital room, casting long, gentle shadows across the floor. Emma stood by the bedside, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead, her eyes tracing the delicate contours of his face. There was a softness in his expression, a quiet strength that had become more pronounced over the past months. The days of exhaustion, fear, and unrelenting responsibility had begun to yield moments of clarity, instances where hope seemed tangible, almost within reach. This was the beginning of a new phase, one where the seeds of resilience and healing started to show signs of growth. Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had arrived in Vermont overwhelmed, weighed down by the impossible choices she had made. Each day had been a battle against fatigue, anxiety, and uncertainty. Yet, through every sleepless night, every hospital visit, and every emotional low, she had discovered an inner strength that she hadn't known existed. The challenges had forced her to confront vulnerability, face her deepest fears, and embrace the complexity of human care. And now, as she watched Lucas smile faintly at her, she realized that even the smallest victories carried monumental significance. The community, too, played an integral role in this emerging light. Neighbors, teachers from the local school, and childhood friends had woven a support network that Emma had come to rely upon. Small acts, home-cooked meals, rides to appointments, thoughtful notes, formed an invisible web of care, reinforcing the notion that they were not alone. The collective effort of so many hands, hearts, and minds reminded Emma that resilience was rarely solitary. Strength, she understood, was magnified through connection, empathy, and shared commitment. These lessons were profound, revealing the hidden power of community in navigating life's most challenging trials. Dr. Reynolds continued to guide them through medical uncertainties with a careful blend of expertise and compassion. One morning, after a particularly encouraging checkup, she shared the preliminary results of a new treatment protocol. The data suggested promise, a chance at meaningful improvement in Lucas's condition. Emma felt her chest tighten, a mixture of cautious optimism and lingering apprehension. She had learned through months of caregiving that hope could be fragile, easily shattered by setbacks, yet when nurtured, it could sustain even the heaviest hearts. Dr. Reynolds's words were like sunlight breaking through a lingering winter storm, illuminating possibilities previously obscured by fear and doubt. Lucas, for his part, was a constant source of inspiration. Despite his illness, he demonstrated courage that belied his age and condition. His humor, often subtle and dry, had a way of lightening the atmosphere even during tense medical appointments. He celebrated small victories with genuine joy, a full meal eaten, a therapy session completed, a day without discomfort. These moments reminded Emma that progress was measured not only in clinical outcomes but in resilience, spirit, and emotional well-being. The joy that Lucas found in these small achievements fueled her own perseverance, creating a feedback loop of mutual support and hope. The growing bond between Emma and Lucas deepened further during this period. Each evening, as snowflakes drifted silently against the window panes, they would sit together by the fireplace, sharing stories, memories, and plans for the future. These rituals became sacred, a haven from the pressures of illness, hospital visits, and constant monitoring. Emma began to appreciate the power of presence, the act of simply being there for someone, of offering attention, empathy, and love. In those moments, words were secondary, the shared silence, the warmth of a hand held, and the gentle gaze between siblings communicated volumes. Emma also discovered personal growth she had not anticipated. The caregiving experience had reshaped her sense of identity, grounding her in values that transcended career and ambition. She learned patience that extended beyond tolerance, empathy that embraced the full spectrum of human emotion, and resilience that was as much moral as it was physical. The challenges she faced had transformed her, revealing the depth of her capacity for love and courage. And yet, she recognized that these lessons were ongoing, the journey was far from over, and each day held new trials to navigate, requiring renewed strength and determination. Amid the hope and progress, there remained caution. Emma knew that setbacks could occur at any moment, that illness was inherently unpredictable, and that emotional endurance required constant vigilance. But she had come to understand that living in fear was counterproductive. Instead, she chose to focus on the tangible moments of growth, joy, and connection. By celebrating these moments, she reinforced both her own resilience and Lucas's. Hope, she realized, was an active practice. It required attention, nurturing, and conscious recognition of life's small triumphs. By the end of this chapter in their story, Emma had embraced a renewed sense of purpose. The light emerging from months of struggle was not merely about medical progress, it was about emotional evolution, strengthened bonds, and the reaffirmation of values that defined family, love, and moral courage. Each small victory, the smile, the laugh, the encouraging word, was a ray of light piercing the long winter of uncertainty and hardship. The section closes with Emma sitting beside Lucas, both gazing out the window at the soft snowfall outside. The golden light of afternoon reflects on their faces, illuminating the hope, resilience, and emotional depth that had developed over months of struggle. Their intertwined hands symbolize connection, commitment, and shared courage. The scene leaves the audience with a sense of uplifted anticipation, reinforcing the idea that even amid hardship, moments of light can emerge, guiding the way forward and reminding them of the enduring power of love, hope, and human resilience. Spring had arrived in Vermont, washing the town in soft greens and bursts of early blossoms. The air was warmer, carrying scents of freshly thawed soil and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the quiet stillness of winter. For Emma, this change in the landscape mirrored an internal shift, a subtle but undeniable turning point in the long, emotionally exhausting journey of caring for Lucas. She had faced countless nights of uncertainty, endless hospital visits, and the gnawing weight of responsibility, but now, there was a palpable sense that transformation, progress, and hope were no longer just fragile ideas, they were tangible, living realities. The morning began like any other, with Emma navigating the familiar routines of medications, breakfast, and therapy sessions. Yet today carried a different energy. Lucas had woken with a spark in his eyes, a sense of curiosity and engagement that Emma had not seen in weeks. He asked questions, laughed at small jokes, and even requested to take a short walk in the hospital corridor, a small act, but one that symbolized his growing strength and agency. Watching him move with such determination, Emma felt a surge of pride and relief, the culmination of months of tireless care and unwavering commitment. Dr. Reynolds had called earlier with promising news. New test results indicated significant improvement in Lucas's condition, a response to the treatment that had seemed uncertain for so long. The data, once a source of anxiety and hesitation, now represented tangible proof that their efforts were making a difference. Emma's heart swelled with a mixture of relief, joy, and cautious optimism. She had learned to temper expectations, to understand that progress in such a delicate situation was often incremental and unpredictable. Yet the positive turn in Lucas's health marked a pivotal moment, a milestone that validated not only medical intervention but the unwavering devotion she had shown day after day. The turning point was not only medical, it was emotional as well. Emma noticed shifts in herself that mirrored Lucas's improvements. She felt lighter, more hopeful, and more confident in her role as his caregiver. The constant fog of exhaustion and worry had begun to lift, replaced by clarity and renewed purpose. She could now allow herself to smile more freely, laugh more genuinely, and embrace the moments of joy without guilt. The lessons she had absorbed during months of struggle, the power of patience, resilience, and empathy, had crystallized into a deeper understanding of her own strength. She realized that adversity had not diminished her, it had expanded her capacity for love, compassion, and moral courage. The family dynamic shifted subtly as well. Emma's parents, who had walked alongside her in both support and anxiety, now shared in the quiet triumph of this turning point. Her mother's eyes sparkled with relief and gratitude, her father's stoic presence softened into moments of genuine warmth. Together, they celebrated the small but significant victories, Lucas eating a full meal, completing a therapy session, or simply laughing without pain. These moments reinforced the bonds between them, illustrating the transformative power of collective endurance and shared hope. Outside the hospital, the community continued to provide unwavering support. Neighbors, friends, and local volunteers had become more than just helpers, they were collaborators in resilience, participants in the narrative of hope and recovery. A former classmate of Emma's, now a nurse in the local clinic, checked in to provide advice and encouragement. A group of students from Lucas's school organized a small care package, filled with drawings, letters, and handmade gifts that brightened his days. The ripple effect of community kindness reinforced Emma's understanding that triumphs, no matter how personal, were often nurtured in connection with others. The emotional weight of the turning point was further amplified by Lucas himself. He began to engage more actively in conversations about his future, expressing desires to return to school, resume hobbies, and reconnect with friends he had temporarily lost touch with. His curiosity and initiative became catalysts for Emma's own reinvigoration. She realized that the turning point was as much about Lucas reclaiming agency over his life as it was about his physical improvement. The subtle interplay of hope, autonomy, and resilience became a defining feature of this stage, illustrating that recovery was not merely medical but profoundly human. Emma's internal reflections were equally revealing. She pondered the months of struggle, the sacrifices made, and the emotional toll she had endured. She recognized that the turning point was not the result of a single intervention, moment, or decision. It was the cumulative effect of tireless care, unwavering presence, emotional honesty, community support, and a willingness to embrace both vulnerability and responsibility. In this realization, she found a sense of purpose and fulfillment that transcended professional success or societal validation. It was the profound satisfaction of making a meaningful difference in the life of someone she loved. By the afternoon, the changes were tangible. Lucas completed a physical therapy session with minimal assistance, his laughter echoing through the otherwise quiet corridor. Emma watched him with a mixture of awe and gratitude, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. The months of uncertainty, sleepless nights, and emotional strain had culminated in a moment of clarity, a turning point where hope transformed from fragile aspiration into observable reality. The scene resonated with both triumph and humility, a reminder that progress often emerges slowly, quietly, and through sustained care rather than dramatic gestures. The section closes with Emma standing by the hospital window, gazing out at the Vermont town bathed in soft spring sunlight. Lucas rests nearby, reading a book with a calm focus, a subtle smile gracing his face. The camera lingers on their intertwined lives, Emma's hand gently resting on his shoulder, a symbol of unwavering support, love, and resilience. The turning point is not just about healing, it is about the culmination of sacrifice, dedication, and the human capacity to endure, adapt, and embrace hope, leaving the audience emotionally invested and eager to witness the unfolding journey of recovery and transformation. The spring sunlight streamed through the hospital windows, illuminating the small room where Emma and Lucas had spent countless hours together. There was a palpable shift in the air, a quiet energy of possibility, fragile yet undeniable. Lucas was sitting upright in bed, a renewed sense of strength reflected in his posture and expression. His recovery had reached a point where the future, once uncertain and fraught with fear, now glimmered with potential. For Emma, this moment demanded both courage and trust, the leap of faith required to believe in the healing process and the life that awaited beyond the hospital walls. Emma had spent months meticulously orchestrating every detail of Lucas's care. Each day had been a delicate balance between medical vigilance and emotional support, and though she had faced setbacks, fatigue, and doubt, she had persevered. Now, standing at this threshold, she realized that the next stage required a different kind of strength. It was no longer just about managing illness, administering medication, or monitoring symptoms. It was about allowing hope to flourish, trusting in progress, and embracing the uncertain yet promising path ahead. The conversation with Dr. Reynolds earlier that morning had left Emma both inspired and anxious. The doctor explained that Lucas's latest tests showed remarkable improvement and that he might soon transition from intensive care to a more independent, outpatient-focused regimen. While the news was positive, it was not without its complexities. Emma understood that this phase demanded confidence, careful planning, and an unwavering commitment to supporting Lucas's autonomy while remaining vigilant. It was a delicate balance, trusting in recovery without relinquishing the protective instincts that had guided her for months. Emma's parents shared in this moment of cautious optimism. Her mother, who had navigated the roller coaster of fear and hope, allowed herself a rare moment of open joy, tears of relief glimmering in her eyes. Her father, usually reserved and stoic, expressed pride and gratitude through quiet gestures, a hand on Emma's shoulder, a nod of approval, a shared glance with his son that conveyed both love and reassurance. The family's dynamic had evolved profoundly through this journey, the shared trials and triumphs had deepened their bonds, creating a sense of unity, resilience, and emotional intimacy that would continue to shape their relationships long after the immediate challenges subsided. Community support, too, remained a crucial component of this leap of faith. Neighbors, friends, and volunteers had been constant pillars of assistance and encouragement. Local teachers organized visits and small celebrations to welcome Lucas back into the school routine, while friends from Emma's hometown checked in, offering both emotional support and practical advice. The cumulative effect of these acts of kindness reinforced Emma's understanding that recovery was rarely an isolated endeavor, it thrived within networks of care, empathy, and shared commitment. Lucas himself approached this transition with courage that belied his age. He was acutely aware of the progress he had made and the ongoing responsibility he shared in maintaining his health. His renewed energy manifested in small but meaningful ways. He eagerly engaged in physical therapy, asked insightful questions about his treatment, and even began setting personal goals for the coming months. Emma observed these behaviors with a mixture of pride, relief, and emotional awe. The leap of faith was not a unilateral act, it was shared, a partnership between caregiver and patient, built on trust, perseverance, and mutual determination. In the quiet moments of reflection, Emma contemplated the sacrifices she had made. Leaving her career in Boston had been a decision that carried profound implications for her identity, ambitions, and independence. Yet, standing on the precipice of this transformative phase in Lucas's life, she realized that the choice had also opened a path to unparalleled growth. She had discovered strengths she had never known, cultivated patience and empathy beyond measure, and forged connections, both familial and communal, that enriched her life in ways that professional success never could. The leap of faith was as much about embracing her own evolution as it was about guiding Lucas toward recovery. Emma also recognized that vulnerability was an essential element of this process. Trusting in progress meant confronting the lingering fear of setbacks, acknowledging the fragility of hope, and embracing uncertainty with courage. She had learned through months of caregiving that emotional strength was not the absence of doubt or anxiety, but the ability to move forward despite them. Each decision, each act of support, and each moment of presence carried profound weight, shaping both her and Lucas's journey in ways that were deeply moral, emotionally resonant, and transformative. The physical transition from hospital care to outpatient routines was another manifestation of this leap. Emma meticulously planned schedules for medication, therapy, and school reintegration, balancing vigilance with the encouragement of independence. She worked closely with Dr. Reynolds and local therapists to ensure a seamless transition, understanding that every detail mattered in preserving progress and sustaining hope. The process was demanding, but it was also deeply empowering, a tangible demonstration of what sustained love, dedication, and community support could achieve. By evening, Lucas sat by the window, a book in hand, while Emma prepared a simple dinner, both immersed in a calm routine that felt both new and reassuring. The sunlight reflected off the snow-dappled trees outside, casting a golden glow into the room. In that serene moment, Emma felt the culmination of months of relentless care, sacrifice, and emotional endurance. The leap of faith was not a singular event, but a sustained act of courage, trust, and hope, an embrace of the uncertain future with confidence, love, and unwavering commitment. The section closes with Emma gently placing her hand on Lucas's shoulder, their eyes meeting in quiet understanding. The world outside, the small Vermont town bathed in evening light, echoed the promise of possibility and renewal. It was a visual representation of hope realized through perseverance, community, and love. The leap of faith, fragile yet powerful, had set them on a path toward a future filled with potential, growth, and shared triumph, leaving the audience emotionally uplifted and deeply connected to their journey. The days following Lucas's transition from intensive care to outpatient routines brought a new rhythm to their lives. Emma found herself navigating a world where progress was tangible but still fragile, where each day carried the potential for triumph or setback. The emotional stakes had shifted, from constant vigilance over immediate health concerns to fostering resilience, independence, and emotional well-being. Healing, Emma realized, was no longer only about medicine and therapy, it was about nurturing hope, trust, and the human spirit. Emma began to notice subtle changes in Lucas. He laughed more freely, engaged in conversation with renewed curiosity, and expressed desires that reflected a forward-looking perspective, a longing to return to school, resume hobbies, and reconnect with friends he had temporarily lost touch with. Each of these small actions was monumental, a testament to the restoration of both body and spirit. Emma felt a swell of pride and relief, but she also understood that sustaining this progress required delicate balance. She could not shield him from every difficulty, nor could she rush his recovery. Healing was a process, intricate and nuanced, demanding patience and emotional attentiveness. Their home became a sanctuary for this holistic recovery. Mornings were filled with structured routines, breakfast, medication, light exercise, but evenings were dedicated to moments of shared reflection and joy. Emma and Lucas would often sit by the fireplace, sharing stories, discussing dreams, or simply enjoying quiet companionship. These moments, unstructured and gentle, were critical in rebuilding emotional strength. They reinforced trust, nurtured resilience, and reminded both siblings that life extended beyond the clinical concerns that had dominated their days. Emma also began to recognize the importance of community in this stage of healing. Teachers, neighbors, and friends continued to offer support, not just practical help, but encouragement, companionship, and shared joy. The school reintroduced Lucas gradually, with teachers providing extra attention and classmates offering friendship and patience. Each positive interaction, no matter how small, reinforced Lucas's sense of belonging, self-worth, and confidence. For Emma, Witnessing these connections flourish was profoundly affirming. It underscored the idea that true healing extends beyond the body to encompass relationships, emotional security, and social reintegration. The emotional growth was mutual. Lucas's courage and resilience inspired Emma, reminding her of the rewards inherent in caregiving. She had faced countless nights of anxiety, moments of despair, and the unrelenting weight of responsibility. Yet the visible progress in her brother illuminated the impact of her love, dedication, and sacrifice. Healing, she realized, was reciprocal. Each act of support and encouragement nurtured strength in both caregiver and patient. In these weeks, Emma also allowed herself moments of reflection and self-care. She recognized that her own emotional and mental well-being were vital components of sustaining Lucas's recovery. She spent time journaling, taking walks in the nearby woods, and reconnecting with friends who had supported her throughout the journey. These acts were not indulgent but necessary. They reinforced her resilience, clarity, and capacity to provide consistent, loving care. The intertwining of her self-care with Lucas's healing created a sustainable cycle of growth, strength, and hope. Family dynamics deepened further during this stage. Emma's parents, witnessing Lucas's improvements, experienced a complex mixture of relief, pride, and lingering caution. Together, they celebrated milestones, Lucas eating a meal independently, completing a therapy session, or participating in a school project, acknowledging the significance of each achievement while remaining mindful of the ongoing process. The family's shared experiences reinforced bonds of empathy, trust, and understanding, illustrating that healing was not just an individual journey, but a collective one, anchored in love and mutual commitment. Emma reflected on how far they had come. The months of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and emotional strain had led to this delicate but profound stage of recovery. She understood that true healing was multidimensional. It encompassed the physical, emotional, and social aspects of life, intertwined with love, community, and resilience. Lucas's journey highlighted the importance of nurturing hope, embracing vulnerability, and fostering autonomy, while Emma's experience underscored the transformative power of caregiving, patience, and moral courage. The section closes with Emma and Lucas sitting on the porch, watching the Vermont sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Lucas, smiling and relaxed, leans against his sister, a subtle symbol of trust, recovery, and emotional security. Emma's gaze shifts to the horizon, reflecting gratitude, hope, and quiet confidence in the journey ahead. Healing beyond the body had begun, encompassing the mind, heart, and spirit, leaving the audience with a sense of emotional catharsis, moral fulfillment, and anticipation for the continued journey toward wholeness. The Vermont morning dawned crisp and golden, the sunlight filtering through budding trees and illuminating the small town in gentle warmth. Emma stood by the window, her eyes tracing the familiar landscape that had been the backdrop of so many challenges, sacrifices, and moments of quiet reflection. Today felt different. It carried an almost tangible sense of resolution, a culmination of months of unwavering care, emotional endurance, and hope nurtured through struggle. Lucas, now visibly stronger and more alert, sat at the kitchen table, sketching with a focus that spoke of regained confidence, curiosity, and joy. The journey to this point had been arduous. Emma had given up her promising career in Boston, leaving behind independence, accolades, and personal dreams to focus entirely on Lucas's recovery. She had faced sleepless nights, constant anxiety, and the heavy responsibility of being the primary caregiver. Every decision carried weight, every oversight felt magnified, and every setback tested her resolve. Yet, through it all, she had discovered resilience, patience, and depths of compassion she had never known existed. This culmination was a testament not only to Lucas's recovery but to the transformative power of selfless love and dedication. The miracle that followed was subtle at first, a spark of laughter during breakfast, a spontaneous suggestion from Lucas about a weekend trip, a gleam of excitement in his eyes that Emma had not seen for months. These moments were small yet monumental, signaling more than physical recovery. They were signs of emotional restoration, hope re-established, and a life regaining its vibrancy. Emma watched, heart swelling, as the person she had nurtured back to health slowly reclaimed not just independence, but a renewed zest for life. Emma's parents, who had been pillars of support and silent witnesses to her sacrifices, now shared in the emotional release of this miracle. Her mother's tears of relief and joy reflected months of pent-up worry, while her father's quiet nods and soft smiles conveyed pride, gratitude, and admiration. The family had endured countless sleepless nights, emotional turbulence, and the roller coaster of uncertainty, yet they now stood together, united in a moment of triumph that transcended words. This was not only Lucas's victory but a testament to the enduring strength of familial bonds forged and tested through adversity. The small Vermont community, which had supported them in countless ways, continued to play an essential role in the unfolding miracle. Neighbors brought breakfast treats, friends stopped by with gifts and laughter, and teachers coordinated reintegration plans to ensure Lucas's return to school was seamless. These acts, though seemingly ordinary, formed the network that amplified the miracle, reinforcing the notion that human connection, kindness, and collective support are integral to overcoming life's challenges. The miracle was not only in Lucas's recovery but in the restoration of relationships, trust, and communal bonds that had been tested by months of hardship. Emma's reflection on her own journey revealed another layer of the miracle. She realized that the sacrifices she had made, her career, her time, and her personal ambitions, had not been losses but investments in love, moral courage, and emotional growth. Through caregiving, she had learned profound lessons about patience, empathy, and resilience. She recognized that miracles were not always instantaneous or dramatic. Sometimes, they were the cumulative result of unwavering commitment, human connection, and the courage to continue despite fear and uncertainty. Lucas's own actions confirmed this transformation. He began participating in social activities, engaging with friends, and expressing goals for his future with clarity and enthusiasm. He showed gratitude in small but meaningful ways, offering smiles, laughter, and moments of connection that reminded Emma why every sacrifice had been worth it. The miracle, she realized, was not just his restored health but the restoration of joy, agency, and hope, the intangible qualities that truly define life's richness. By afternoon, Emma and Lucas were outside, walking slowly along the town's snow-melted streets, taking in the scent of spring blooms and the gentle warmth of the sun. The simple act of walking together, sharing conversation and laughter, felt profound. Each step was a reminder of endurance, resilience, and the human capacity for renewal. The miracle had unfolded not as a single event but as a series of connected moments, acts of love, patience, and care that culminated in a restored life and deepened relationships. The section closes with Emma holding Lucas's hand, both of them smiling as the sun casts a golden glow over the Vermont town. The camera lingers on their faces, capturing the relief, gratitude, and quiet triumph that permeate the scene. The miracle that followed was both tangible and emotional, a powerful reminder of the transformative potential of love, sacrifice, and unwavering hope. Emma's journey, though marked by hardship, ultimately revealed the extraordinary power of human resilience and the profound beauty of selfless devotion, leaving the audience emotionally moved and inspired.